If you love a prodigal, you can discover help and hope for the wilderness journey right here at When You Love a Prodigal podcast. Welcome. You can also find help and hope for your own journey. I think you're going to like it. And welcome back to our conversation about our prodigals. As you may know, I seriously injured my right shoulder and arm in September. I was recovering basically all fall and am now finally getting back to my responsibilities. So I know you haven't heard from me, but I hope you've been listening to some of those on YouTube. Every podcast from 5 years is on YouTube. On a few episodes of this podcast, I have mentioned the great joy I have in my grandchildren, all 10 of them. I just saying that makes me ecstatic to think about them. I believe grandparents have an incredibly important role, calling in the lives of their grands. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm especially pleased to be chatting with Larry Fowler. He is the founder of Legacy Coalition, which is intentional Christian grandparenting. And as soon as we get intentional, we can see more that we can do. I have shared on Legacy Coalition's Grand Monday Night, which Larry will tell us about some ways that grandparents can especially play a role when there are prodigals in the family. And I've written a bunch of blog posts for them. And so I'm thrilled with what God is doing in this ministry. And I'm thrilled to introduce it to you and let Larry help us see what role you can play when there might be a prodigal or there is a prodigal among your grands. You have an important role. So welcome, Larry.
Well, thank you, Judy. You remember a couple of years ago when you had breakfast with Diane and I.
I do remember that.
You came all the way across the whole Orlando
You're right. I did.
City
I do
area
remember
to
that.
meet with us on the other side. We appreciated that so
That
much.
was a fun meeting, too.
Yeah,
I loved it. So, Larry, would you give us just a little background on the idea of Legacy Coalition, where it came from and how it's rolled out?
Well, of course, most of the ministries that we're involved in come out of our personal calling and personal experience. And so let me just kind of quickly tell you my family background, which is a big part of this. So Diane and I were married at age 20. Our daughter was married at age 19, and we became grandparents at age 43. That's not so unusual, but I loved the little guy when he was born. In fact, he was born on my birthday, Judy.
So there's a special bond there.
There is. And my daughter says the best birthday present she ever gave me. And of course, she's right.
That's true.
But you know, I was involved in ministry. I've been involved in children's ministry all of my life. And I didn't think a lot about what my role was. I loved him, but I didn't really think, what should I be doing as a grandfather? And then 7 years later, that son-in-law, the grandson's dad, had made a bunch of really bad decisions over and over again, and they divorced.
Oh,
and
I've been there with that.
Yeah, my daughter moved in with us with her 3 little ones, and I became both dad and grandpa. And
what a joy and challenge.
I started stepping up my thinking about what should I be doing, because I didn't want my grandsons to follow in the sins of their father. So that was in about the year 2000. Then in 2010, I was one of the executives for Awana clubs. You know of Awana.
I know Awana.
And I was working on a curriculum project in my department that meant me studying all the passages in the Bible that talked about generation to generation. And
that must have been really enlightening, eye-opening kind of thing.
Well, it was, but nothing ever came of the curriculum. It was a project that didn't go anywhere. And after we kind of said, I don't know what to do with this, I still had my notes. And one Friday afternoon, when the office was really dead, I was looking at those notes again. And I saw Scripture with new eyes. I'm sure that's happened to you.
Yes. Yes.
A passage that I'd never really noticed before just jumped out at me, and it was Deuteronomy 4:9, the last part. It says, teach your children and your children's children. And I was sitting there, and it just hit me. I have a responsibility before God as a grandfather. I had never thought about
that was the parents' responsibility.
Yeah. I saw the first part. I didn't see the grandparent part. And that day, I saw Scripture with new eyes, and my role as a grandfather with new eyes.
And what did you see or understand that role would look like?
That I had a responsibility for God to tell faith stories, to pass on, to be intentional about passing on my faith. That verse is talking about telling children and grandchildren the things God has done in our lives. So it is kind of a verse about faith stories.
And I love it. It's a beautiful thing. When I look back at my life, I don't necessarily think of I knew my grandparents, and we actually visited them, but they were not really a part of my life on any consistent basis. And they were not that far away even. So it's not like I couldn't see them.
Well, by this time I was far away. My daughter had remarried, moved to Colorado. We were living in Illinois. And my son, though, was starting his family in Southern California. And it became such a deep conviction that I went to the president and said, I can't do this anymore. I got to move. And so we moved from Illinois to California to be close to our son as he was starting his family.
Yay for you.
I got reassigned, had a new assignment. My job was to just kind of schmooze with children's pastors in mega churches.
Sounds fun. And there are plenty of mega churches in California.
There were.
I lived there 25 years.
And of course, I visited a bunch of them here in Florida too. And invariably they would say, so why did you fly in from California? I thought the headquarters was in Illinois. So I would tell them about my passion for grandparenting, Judy. And then I started asking them, so has your church ever done anything on grandparenting? Guess what?
Never.
Not a single church.
I've never had it.
Even the churches whose pastors were grandfathers. And they would say, our pastor talks about his grandkids all the time, but you know what? We've never thought about equipping grandparents. And we could not find a single church in America that was equipping Christian grandparents.
And look what God's done in a short time, really, with this ministry.
Now there's 2,500. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. But there are 300,000 churches in America, so we have 2 zeros to go. We're almost at 1%.
But you're multiplying rather rapidly, is my observation.
Yes, God's blessing is just on us. We're just seeing the favor of God in the things that
so tell me what you're doing and what does it look like? The name, where did that come from?
Well, we wanted to be a legacy coalition of organizations that were committed to that, but there weren't hardly any other organizations interested in grandparenting. So we are a coalition. We've changed our direction a little bit. We're a coalition of churches and individuals who are devoted to being intentional Christian grandparents. And the motive that drives us is we want to see our grandkids in heaven with us someday.
Absolutely.
There's nothing I want more in this world than that. So we're going to work really hard at being the best influences we can possibly be for our God in their lives.
That's so thrilling to hear. And so what did you start with then? What did you start doing?
We started with with developing some resources. There were virtually no resources for grandparents. That first year, in 2016, we actually developed 4 resources, 2 books, a video series, and a little kit. With 4, Judy, we were the largest source of Christian grandparenting resources in the world with just 4.
That didn't take long, did it?
No. And then we did the very first national conference on Christian grandparenting.
Okay,
that first
because
year.
I know that's been a part of it.
It's been a part. We do it about, not every year, but about every 18 months, 16 to 18 months we do it.
So, what happens at the conference?
Well, it's a 2-day conference, so it's a blend of main stage talks.
And you have some
breakouts.
pretty big mainstay speakers
Pretty big
now.
main stage people, yeah. And we're doing it this year at Chuck Swindoll's church. And, we think he might, this is a secret. Should we do a secret on the air?
Mm-hmm.
We
If
think
you want.
we think Chuck Swindoll may actually be there.
Really?
Yeah.
He's my friend.
Yeah. He is we hope, we're just praying that he's well enough for that to happen.
That would be awesome. He's a good man.
He is a great man. If you know what, if Protestants had a pope, I would vote for Chuck Swindoll.
For Chuck Swindoll. That's good. He's got it. I knew Lucy even better than I knew him.
Did you?
Yeah. So that's a great thing.
Yeah.
So what happens there at the conference?
Well, we'll have pretty close, between 1,500 and 2,000 people.
I thought this one was looking really big.
Yeah, and we'll have resource providers. We have like a resource center with about 60 different ministries will be represented there that all have tools to equip grandparents. We have speakers that all are focused around the theme of a heart for eternity, which means looking at this life from the perspective of eternity, not just warm, fuzzy feelings about heaven, but looking through the lens of eternity for what we do in this life. And they're tackling that from all sorts of different perspectives. What do you do when the grandkids are addicted to screens? How do you handle gender identity issues and things like that?
So huge.
How do you handle brokenness in the family? All of those topics will be covered by main stage speakers, and then even more practically so in the breakouts.
And then you also have the Monday night, Grand Monday Night,
Yep.
Great title, by the way. Real good job. So I know that came during COVID, at the beginning of COVID.
It did.
And so how did that evolve? Because that's a big deal every week.
Our model before that was to do seminars. And we had a full plate of seminars scheduled when COVID hit. And of course, all of them canceled.
Yeah.
And we were like, what are we going to do? How are we going to reach grandparents? And Barb Lorenz, who has become our host and become a friend of yours. I know.
She's a sweetheart.
She just, she was a successful businesswoman that was looking for something to do significantly in ministry. And she stepped up and she said, I'll take this on. And she's become the host and producer of a webinar that we have that's free every Monday night. People can watch it online, live, or they can watch the replay on our website for 7 days afterwards and still get it.
Which I've done when I can't.
Yeah, and now we have over 250 episodes that are in our library, and they tackle about every challenge imaginable for grandparents. Yeah. And you were on there talking about prodigals.
I was on there,
topic
a couple of years ago. And that was very fun to make me stop and think, how can you concisely give some help in the short time that is available? And
well, you did. You did.
I love it. So you told me you had a story about that.
I do. Yeah. So at the end of that episode, you told a story, and I don't remember the details too well of the story, but I remember that you told a story about a group of grandmas that got together to pray for their prodigals.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
I have a relative that has 8 kids, and he and his wife have a prodigal with one of the 8. When his wife was listening that night, and she said, I'm going to do that in my church. And she got together, she called up some of her grandma friends, and they started meeting on Monday nights to pray specifically for prodigals. By the way, I think that's one of the things that we could do to become more effective in praying for prodigals, is this whole idea of praying together, corporate prayer. And anyway,
in groups of grandmothers or the parents or in a church to say we're having a prodigal prayer night.
Yeah,
we do that with our Prayer for Prodigals ministry. One of our women, I'll never forget when she came to her first gathering to pray for prodigals. June 2nd is our Worldwide Prodigal Prayer Day. It's our prodigal's birthday, spiritual birthday, the day he met Jesus. It was the beginning of kind of life of up and down. It took him another 20 years to really get to a good place. But anyway, so this woman came the first time she realized all the trouble her daughter was. And she just, the big eyes like headlights shining. And she and her husband walked through a hard time. Her daughter is mostly okay. We helped her decide that her daughter and her son could live with them rather than suffer out there trying to figure out how to hold life together. And she now leads a huge ministry for people with prodigals. Yeah. So there are a lot of good stories.
there are, and those that are listening that don't have a good story yet, you just keep hoping. The Lord can really work in their lives. Well, so my relative says to me after this had happened a while, and I didn't know about it, but so he's telling me about it. And he says, Larry, I just love it when she comes home from these Monday night prayer requests or prayer groups, because virtually every week there's a miracle of a prodigal taking a step back towards faith. And their daughter has returned to the Lord, stopped making some bad decisions and making good decisions. And so and
hopefully they can have patience.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think they decided right and expect transformation overnight, and it happens sometimes, but it usually is a journey. So
I had an interview with a man that has a prison ministry out of the state of Montana about a month ago. And he was telling me, he says, he's talking about the value of grandparent prayer for prodigals. And he says he'll go into a jail and he will ask the inmates, how many of you have a grandparent that's probably praying for you? And Judy, he said, most of the men in virtually every situation, most of the men will raise their hands in the air. And then he tells them, he said, I just tell them, you might as well come right down to the front to the altar call right now, because you don't stand a chance if grandparents are praying for you.
Grandparents often have more time to focus on praying for them. Parents are busy anyway, but they have discipline issues and boundary issues and that kind of thing to work on. Yeah. So what are some of the topics you've covered in Monday night?
Well, we talk a lot about just the barriers, how to overcome the barriers that grandparents face. And so a huge one, of course, is just geographical distance. Well, when you don't see them very often, sometimes it's not the number of miles. You could live across town and not see your grandkids much.
Yes, it has to be intentional.
But how do you deal with that? How do you deal with relational issues? And what do you do if your son and daughter-in-law gets divorced and she gets custody of the kids and she's mad at your son and she takes it out on you?
That's right. That happened.
You didn't have anything to do with it, but you get the full her wrath, and she cuts you off from the grandkids. Grandparents getting cut off.
Well, I was going to say, and that's a huge thing too. Yeah. If your kids are the ones that are maybe making not so good choices, and they don't want you influencing their children, then it becomes prayer is the main thing you have. I mean, it's always the main thing, but it's the only thing.
Yes.
I could tell you quite a few stories of miracles God's done because the grandparents couldn't see their grandkids, but they could pray, and God worked.
Yeah.
So it's...
Yeah, another story. I mean, this is a month, though. These stories come all the time, Judy, and that's the thing that I would want your listeners to know. There are stories after story after story out there in all sorts of ministry. There was a couple in Louisiana that their son and daughter-in-law divorced. She took the kids to Europe, and they completely lost track. They had no idea where these grandkids were. And they had a close relationship with them when they were little. And that's all they could do. I mean, they couldn't find out where they were, nothing. But they kept praying for their grandkids. And one day, there was a knock at their door, and this young man, about 30 years old, was at the door, and he said, "Are you?" and said their names. And they said, "Yes, we are." He said, "I'm your grandson."
Oh, God, thank you.
And they welcomed him, talked to him. He was so curious about their faith and why he hadn't had any access to them all those years. And now he's a worship pastor in a church. And you were just saying sometimes it takes a lot longer than what we want. Sometimes it's going to take until after we die.
Oh, that is true for sure.
Yeah.
It is.
But we're in this for the long game.
That's good. So we're talking about this to let your audience and my audience know how to have a focus and to be intentional. Yeah. It's intentional Christian grandparenting. Yes. And one of the most important things a grandparent can do is be on our knees, to be praying for the Lord. So as you are doing even this next summit conference and the content of your things, how do you see that you'll be encouraging the grandparents? Because I imagine you have a lot of grandparents who are listening, since that's what it's about.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things, there's I don't know, I have a lot of things in my head, but one of the other things that I think is that grandparents really need to work on is leaning in to the relationship. We say we can pray, and that's exactly right. We should. It is first. It is the most important. It is the most powerful.
But there's more.
And one of the temptations that grandparents have is when life gets a little messy, is to lean out, lean away from it, avoid it. Mm-hmm. And if we have children or grandchildren that are prodigals, they have probably made some really bad choices. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're in jail, maybe they're on drugs, maybe they're in a lifestyle that is all of them. And that's a time we need to love them even more. That's a time we need. I had another relative who I've known since I was a kid. We played together a lot when I was a little kid. And we have a good friendship. And through all these years, when when he and I communicate together, it's he and I. I've known his wife all that time, but I've never got a phone call from her or anything like that. It's always him, right? Because we're two guys.
Yeah.
Well, one day, not too long ago, I got a voicemail from her. She says, "Larry, call me right away. I need to talk to you." And I'm scared because I'm thinking, oh, no, heart attack.
What's happened?
Yeah, a heart attack or something. After all, we're old, right? And so and she says, "Larry," she says, "my granddaughter's just come out as a lesbian." And I said, this is the time to lean in even harder on the relationship. You don't have to agree. But you need to lean in. You need to love her more fervently than you've ever loved before.
That's right.
And
Larry,
it's so hard.
Say it again. People don't know that. They think they got to stand up for what's right. Yeah, and if they don't agree with where they are, they come out against them as opposed to loving them.
Yeah. Just Sunday, I was at a church, had a conversation with a pastor. about someone in his congregation that had kids making wrong decisions. He said the way she talks about them, she says it's just she just puts them down and talks so negative and everything. He says, I'm fearful she's destroying her relationship with them. And so that is an epidemic among us. And
yes.
We talk a lot, Judy, about balancing truth and grace.
Yes.
Jesus was the full embodiment of both, right? John 1:14. And if we're going to be Jesus to them, we have to balance truth and grace. But we also can have a strategy of sometimes leading with truth, and sometimes our strategy needs to be lead with grace.
Right.
When Jesus dealt with sinners, his strategy 100% of the time
was grace.
Was lead with grace first. Why? So they hear truth, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we talk about that a lot. But you know what? You and I have a history that is somewhat similar in that we grew up with a high view of truth.
Oh, and most people who are true followers of Jesus would do that.
We believe in the Bible. We look for Bible-believing churches. We, all those things. And I just wonder if we've got that out of balance, and we're so anxious for our children and grandchildren to hear truth that we neglect grace.
Which reminds me of our son, who was our prodigal, we adopted when he was 10 years old. It was a long story. But when we were at a hard time that he almost immediately was challenging, and was for a long time, the Lord said to me, when you make mistakes with this boy, and you will, and of course we made mistakes, he said, make them on the side of grace.
Yes, yeah.
And that changed how we dealt with him. Yeah, there were truth things we had to do, but he knew that we loved him, but it was like, oh, so I get criticized now, not as much now because he's finally in a very good place, but it took 20 years for him to grow into it. But God he says, grace, Judy, grace.
Yeah.
All he's had is negative things in his life. His early life was hard. He just needs somebody who's going to love him unconditionally and show grace.
So, and what is grace? Grace is giving them what they don't deserve.
Absolutely.
Maybe they do deserve a tongue lashing.
Yes.
Maybe they do deserve some
consequences,
strong words, some consequences. But as grandparents, you know what? I don't even know why we're called grandparents. I don't know why grand is attached to the word parent to describe us. But I have a different idea. I think we ought to be called grace parents instead of grandparents.
I like that.
Because our role is different. And as grandparents, well, it's kind of the parents' job to tell them the truth. We know many parents don't, but parents are the ones that are to bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord.
Right.
They're the ones to pass on truth. How about if we supplement that with grace?
With a lot of grace, yes. I agree with you, and we should definitely do that. So, what would you say is a very important thing besides what we just said? In addition, that you would encourage my listeners, many of whom are grandparents, because the parents don't have time, don't have energy, are too busy trying to salvage this person. And the grandparents have more time often, and often have learned a little more about life. And so they're ready. So what are some guidelines you would give to grandparents if there are prodigals, either their own children or their grandchildren, but especially their grandchildren?
One of the things I would say is don't be embarrassed. We, especially in our churches, we tend to want to not tell anybody if we have a family member that's not doing well.
Yeah.
You know
I
what?
know that.
I've been in senior adult classes, Judy, where they'll have prayer requests at the beginning of their class. 25 prayer requests, and every single one of them is a physical ailment. But I know that there's some heart pains that are greater than any of those, but they're too embarrassed to put that on the prayer list. So they put their aching
own
big toe, not the ache that's in their heart.
I love that.
And
That's
so
beautiful.
we need to understand we're grandparents who have prodigals need to understand they're not alone. In fact, very few families are not messy. Almost all of them
Absolutely.
are. And if someone has a family that's not messy, just wait a generation and it will be. You know, we're all born with a sin nature, right? And it comes out. And so
It will
first thing is don't be embarrassed.
I love that.
And don't take it as a judgment upon your own parenting. That's really important.
Because it could feel like that.
It can feel like that. Yeah. I have a good friend, Rob Reno. Rob has a wonderful family ministry, and Rob comes from a pretty messy home situation, comes out of that himself. But he says if everything in your family is good, if you have good relationships and everything, you be really careful how you talk about that, because it's like a kick in the gut. If you brag on how good your family is doing, it's like a kick in the gut to all the parents.
You've done a good job.
Yeah. And he says, the Bible, he's right, the Bible has examples of good parents that have bad kids, and good parents that have good kids, and bad parents that have bad kids, and bad parents that have good kids. So they're all there.
They're all there.
Let's not feel like we have to hide it. Let's not feel embarrassed about it. And that's how we find others to pray with about this. If we're quiet and hide it, we're going to be praying all by ourselves on this issue.
That gets tricky if the grandkids especially, or even the parents who are around and we're talking about our prodigals.
Of course.
We have to be careful with that. But,
with discernment.
You have to get some comradeship, kind of.
Yes.
Some others who understand. That's great. So right now, if you were to run into somebody, if Larry over here were to say, tell me what to do, tell me the next steps I could take, and tell how you all at Legacy Coalition can help.
With a prodigal? Yeah. Well, the first question I would ask is, can you increase your prayer game?
Yes.
Can you pray more effectively, more fervently, more earnestly than you do right now? Could you?
And join with others to pray too.
And then can you join with others?
Yes.
I think that sometimes we make power and prayer maybe more complicated or more mysterious than what it really is. James 5:16 in New Living says the earnest prayer of a righteous person has great power and brings wonderful results. And there are two qualifiers, Judy: earnest, righteous. Earnest, what does it just mean? I'm sincere. I mean it. It means I mean my prayer, right? I mean, I'm not letting my mind wander. I'm not doing it because it's just routine. I'm really talking to God, pouring my heart out to Him. That's what earnest is. And then it's talking about righteous, and I'm so glad that verse is not in Romans, because Romans says there's none righteous. But
right.
Of course, it's talking about positional righteousness there. James talks about practical righteousn's.
I like you.
So
I agree with these things you're saying.
So we can have a practical righteousness. It means we're not doesn't mean we're perfect. It means we're sincere in our faith. James talks about our works demonstrating our faith. We have a sincere faith. And when we do those two things, earnest, righteous has to do with our heart and our relationship to God, then we can just expect that God's going to have great power in our prayer. Still might take a while.
Oh yeah, it might.
But that's really important.
So what resources have you all come up with that you can help people with?
Well, you mentioned Grand Monday nights, and again, there are 250 different videos in our library there, a number of which deal with prodigals from different perspectives. Yeah. I couldn't tell you the exact number of how many, but I would guess there's between 5 and 10 at least of those episodes that are all about that topic from different
I've
subject
seen
experts.
Several that you have.
And of course we have hundreds of blogs or articles.
Yeah, I've written at least 5 or 6 of them.
You have. You are one of our bloggers. And
your girl likes me.
Yes, she sure does. She sure does. And so if somebody likes to read, they can examine the blog.
A lot of people don't
read
anymore.
They like to listen. We've got those. Yeah.
But you have other reasons. You have a whole library kind of and a whole store.
Yep. And then there are resources. But I just want to tell you, your writing on it, Judy, is some of the best there is. I mean, it's not.
Thank you.
The books that you've written on praying for prodigal are some of the best ones there are.
Oh.
We don't need to,
No, that's okay. It's been a gift from God. I wouldn't have chosen it. I didn't choose it.
The one that is 100.
90 Days of Grace for the Wilderness is the subtitle. It's just called When You Love a Prodigal.
That is awesome.
I do get an awful lot of good feedback on it.
I'm sure you do. It's on my desk.
What I learn day by day.
It's on my desk in my office.
Thank you. Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Tell me about the different card things you have, like the prayer cards and the talk cards.
Yep. We have 3 different kinds of cards. We have promise cards, let's talk cards, and prayer cards. All of those are for a grandparent that may say, well, I'm just not that creative. I need help coming up. I'm glad to borrow from somebody else's idea, but
and
coming up with
most people are.
Yeah, most people are. So the prayer cards are things to pray for or with your grandchild. So it's a set of cards, and one side of the card has a prayer that the grandparent can pray, and then a corresponding prayer that the grandchild can pray on the other side. Let's talk cards.
Those are brand new, right?
They're brand new,
yes.
Brand new product. Mm-hmm. Then we have let's talk cards that are conversation starters.
And they're fun and involving
and serious and everything in between.
Mm-hmm.
So my youngest grandson is now 10, and I often take him to soccer practice. And he'll get in my pickup truck with me, and right in there we've got let's talk cards. And he'll pick it up, and he will leaf through, and he'll find one he wants to ask me. And so it's great. Always it's interesting because often the grandkids will start the conversations with those. And then promise cards is 100 promises that you can write your grandchild's name in and stick it in a little note to them, put it in a snack for them, with whatever works. So we try to provide tools that will equip grandparents for their ministry with their grandkids.
And one of the things that you have encouraged, though you don't do them, I don't think, is camps.
That's correct.
Grand
That's
camps
correct.
or something.
Yeah. Christian Grandparenting Network, which is a great partner of ours in vision and in mission, they run grand camps, and they have some. Then there are also a lot of Christian camps that do grandparent-grandchild weekends as well.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Getting more and more all the time. So.
Well, I think people are realizing the value and the importance and the necessity. As life out there gets more and more challenging, there's more need for for us to make sure that grandparents can always be a part of the life, but that can step in where there's pain or need or neglect, or especially divorces and that. So, final words. What would you want to say to people out there who love a prodigal, who could gain from what you're doing?
I think the greatest purpose in life is found in the grandparent years. I think the greatest purpose. And it's
for the grandparents, and eventually, actually, for the whole family.
Yes, because the purpose for a grandparent is not found in what you do. It's found in who you are, in being the patriarch and matriarch of your family. What an incredible privilege it is to be in a position where you can love people into eternity and guide them, and what an amazing thing. And like I said earlier on, I want everybody to catch the passion that I have, and I know you have too, Judy, the passion that overwhelms every other passion in life, and that is I want my grandkids in heaven with me. Mm-hmm. The closer I get, the more I think about it, and the more I think about it, the more I want my whole family there. And I want to spend my hours and weeks and years doing everything I can to be an instrument of the Holy Spirit in bringing them to faith.
Thank you, Larry. This is a wonderful conversation, my topic for sure. But to my listeners, I'm going to put in the show notes 3 different resources that you all have that I'm offering to give away. So if you listeners would like to go to the show notes and pick one of those that you would really like, just indicate that and do what it says to let us know, and you'll be in a drawing to get a free one. But I'll also tell you how to go buy them for yourself too, in case you're not the one who wins. So thank you, and blessings on you in your intentional grandparenting. I love that concept, and what you're doing with Legacy Coalition, but all the different ways that God has led, because grandparents play an essential, important role in making sure, contributing to how our grandchildren get to know Jesus, get to walk with God, get to find why He made them and what His purposes for them are. What a privilege. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Glad to be with you, Judy.